We just saw the second teaser for the new DCU's Lantern series, and this should have been the first one. That first teaser came out 2 months ago. Now keep in mind, it is currently May, and the series comes out in August. So that's in 3 months, which means there's going to be more advertising for this series. We're going to get more information on the story, potentially other characters, who the villains are. Not that I think we need it, but this very much is the beginning of the promotional cycle for Lanterns. But that being said, obviously the first teaser caused a little bit of controversy on the internet, mostly because they didn't do that much green stuff. You saw a little bit of the Green Lantern ring working, but besides that, if you just watched that first teaser and expected it to be a pretty one-to-one representation of what the series was, Green Lantern fans were a little worried, because it seems like this might be one of those adaptations of a thing, but it doesn't fully have faith in the thing, especially in the silliness of the thing, which is something that James Gunn and the new DCU has been embracing so far. Comic book goofiness mixed with sincere drama, but people were worried that we were going to get the diet version of the Lantern story. It didn't help that Damon Lindelof made a joke on a comedy podcast that, when taken out of context, would make it seem like he didn't like the green in the Green Lantern series either. But that was all cleared up online, and I've been waiting for a new trailer. Instead, we got a second teaser, which I think looks great, and I think is what the people who didn't like the first teaser wanted. Besides just showing more Green Lantern stuff, it gets into more of the story, the dynamic between Hal Jordan and John Stewart. Besides this Men in Black, I'm the old veteran and you're the new recruit, buddy cop dynamic. This teaser showed us a couple of characters that we had not seen before, and gave us a little bit more information about what the backstory of these characters is going to be. So I want to just walk through some of the things we saw in the teaser that worked. I'm not going to go over individual issues and try to figure out what order they all go in, but I do think there were some lines and images that really stood out and impressed me. First one, this trailer starts big. We get the image of a green shield being projected to stop some kind of red laser beam. Seeing people on the internet suggest that this means the Red Lanterns are involved. Now, I don't think that's impossible. Also, sometimes laser beams are just red. But this is a big difference from the first teaser that barely showed any green stuff. And this teaser feels like a pretty deliberate reaction to the first teaser. So on one hand, Hal Jordan is using the Green Lantern ring to do important things, and on the other hand, we see he's using it to create money that he can presumably put into a jukebox. And right off the bat, that's the relationship between these two. It's not just the Men in Black relationship, it's kind of the opposite of the Men in Black relationship. The veteran is the one that doesn't take things too seriously, and the new recruit is the one who's more interested in following the rules and procedure. Hal Jordan says that he didn't interview for the ring, which is never how that works for him. He pretty much always gets the ring after Abin crash lands on Earth and dies, as he is the being in the vicinity with the most willpower. But it's interesting that he mentioned specifically, I didn't audition for it, as if to say that John Stewart did audition for it. Now, I don't know exactly how this has always worked in the comics. I was under the impression that John Stewart was given the ring after Guy Gardner was I don't think he was killed, but incapacitated, since Guy Gardner was the backup Green Lantern for Earth, and John Stewart was made the new backup Green Lantern. I'm wondering if they're going to change that and turn it into something a little bit more like a job interview. I can't imagine Hal Jordan and Guy Gardner get along. Barely anyone gets along with Guy Gardner. And this Hal Jordan doesn't seem incredibly easy to get along with. So I wonder if Guy Gardner in this Earth set in motion some sort of audition process to replace him, to be his understudy. And then in the series, people have suggested, what if something happens to Guy Gardner and John Stewart is forced to take over? I think that could be cool. The problem with that is, it seems like Hal Jordan and John Stewart are kind of fighting over the same ring, or John Stewart just is fully not able to use the ring yet, which would make sense. And John Stewart, on paper, feels like a good Green Lantern. He's disciplined, he's traditionally an architect, although we don't see any of that here, and he was in the Marines. It's a perfect combination of kind of tactical decision-making and creativity, which is important when you're figuring out who the new Green Lantern is going to be. But yeah, I'm not expecting that there's some sort of Green Lantern American Idol that John Stewart won, but I wonder if Guy Gardner did give him the job after an actual interview process, because that would be interesting. And specifically, John Stewart says the Green Lantern should have to work for it because it's so much power, and we see him training at a boxing gym, and we see him paratrooping. Later, we'll see him on an important sniping mission, which is usually a pretty big part of his origin story. But it's interesting here because traditionally in the comics, the rings choose their bearers. Now, there are some exceptions to that, and this seems like it's going to end up being one of them. And it explains why Hal Jordan wouldn't like John Stewart. Hal Jordan believes in the power of the Green Lantern rings, and believes in their judgment because they picked him. And he's the best. But they didn't pick John Stewart, or at least it doesn't seem like they did. It's cute how Jordan tells John Stewart that he's going to get the Green Lantern ring over his dead body. A lot of people have wondered because Hal Jordan is older. James Gunn seems to love the animated Justice League universe, which John Stewart was a part of instead of Hal Jordan. Maybe he does die at some point in this series. I think that would be a really strong move for them to make. I think that might make fans kind of upset, but considering the only other on-screen Green Lantern representation we've had up until this point, if you don't count that one special from like the 90s or 2000s, with, I think, Kyle Rayner, just been Ryan Reynolds in the movie nobody really likes that Deadpool won't stop making fun of, an unnamed lantern that we see in the fight with Darkseid during the Zack Snyder Justice League movie, a behind-the-scenes shot of a Green Lantern that Zack Snyder was working on in his own backyard, yet never saw it to fruition. That did seem to be Jon Stewart. And of course, we got Guy Gardner in Superman and then in Peacemaker a little bit. But I don't think any fans would look at those takes and say, that's the definitive version of Green Lantern. I'm not convinced they're going to say that about this version either, but I think if this version of Hal Jordan makes a big impression in one series, that's already better than Hal Jordan has ever looked on screen. So while I don't think they need to kill him, I think the show could get away with killing him, using him to introduce Jon Stewart, who is going to be the main player in this universe, and still put together an iconic Hal Jordan performance. I don't know, there's also the possibility of them having him go evil, turn into Parallax, maybe goes to jail at the end of the series. I don't love that, just because I think the Parallax story now would be a little too early. And that's not Parallax, the big yellow monster from the Ryan Reynolds movie. Parallax, the idea that Hal Jordan, after the destruction of Coast City, goes crazy, becomes a villain. It's that image where he's got a lantern ring on every finger. We do see Hal Jordan flying again. We saw that in the first teaser. And I think I misspoke in one of my original teasers, because I said, we're going to see more green stuff. We're going to see the green aura when he's flying, which is usually how that's presented. However, we've never seen that before. Guy Gardner does not use it, and Hal Jordan didn't use it in that teaser. I still think they should put it in, because I think it looks cool, but it's not clear that's what they're going to do with it. And sometimes the Green Lantern aura is just kind of a green outline around the Green Lantern. Sometimes it's more of like a fireball surrounding Green Lantern. Specifically, it looks like a fireball surrounding Green Lantern in the Green Lantern Earth 1 series, which series, 2 trade paperbacks. But those were the images that James Gunn chose to use during the presentation of the new DCU, and this suit looks very influenced by that design as well. So I don't know, it's not too late. Put a big green aura around him, it looks cool. Let's talk about the suit. So we've seen total 3 shots of the suit. The first one comes in the first teaser. It looks pretty dingy. It's on a clothing rack. I assume that's Hal Jordan taking it out of storage. A lot of people said it's not green enough. Well, if you pay attention, the scene where he's getting interviewed, which seems to be like right after he gets introduced as Green Lantern, when Jon Stewart is watching on TV, the suit looks way more green. It seems like the green suit has lost a lot of its luster, which makes sense because that seems to be how Hal Jordan feels about the Green Lantern job in general. But then we do see him fully wearing the suit in a scene where he seems to be talking to Sinestro. The lighting here is tough to read, but it definitely looks like the person who is in what seems to be a prison has red skin, which I think is really interesting. Partially because the Earth 1 version of Sinestro is a Green Lantern who turns to a Yellow Lantern, but doesn't go to jail. He's not really a bad guy. If anything, he's misled by the Guardian. People were wondering how Sinestro would factor into this story, and I think this is a smart way to split the difference between introducing him as a villain and having to get into the Green and Yellow Lantern mythology, which was teased in the Ryan Reynolds movie. And honestly, out of everything in the Ryan Reynolds movie, Mark Strong's Sinestro was one of the only things people really liked. And he did only turn into the Yellow Lantern in the post-credit scene. But I like the idea that this Sinestro is already in prison. He's already been captured. And he's somewhere that Hal Jordan can get to him. Now, Hal Jordan and the Green Lanterns can travel through space very quickly. I wouldn't be surprised if he's in some sort of human jail. This could be an Argus facility. This could be a similar place to where Lex Luthor is being held. And now we're kind of starting to get the foundation of the Legion of Doom or the Injustice League or some sort of team like that. I can totally see a version with Luthor, Captain Triumph from Peacemaker, Rick Flag Sr., Sinestro, I don't know, maybe Lobo. I don't love that, but he seems like he's going to be the villain that comes out of that movie. I don't think we're going to see Krem again. Obviously there's a lot of other players that are usually part of that team. Black Manta, who was in the Aquaman movies that don't count anymore. Usually Weather Wizard or something, and I doubt we'll get a Flash anytime soon. Traditionally one of the Batman villains, someone like Scarecrow, maybe Joker. We know Cersei's in prison. She would make sense on this team. Clayface, obviously he's getting his movie. And then Gorilla Grodd, I guess, is out there somewhere. And we also have the Engineer. So we've got at least 7 characters. Luthor, Sinestro, the Engineer, Cersei, Captain Triumph, Clayface, and let's say Gorilla Grodd. Feel free to add in the one that I forgot. But that's an Injustice League. that could work. And most, if not all of them, are in prison. Perhaps even the same prison. But anyway, we see the full body suit. I think it looks pretty good. Seems like a very close adaptation of the Earth 1 suit, which, isn't my favorite Green Lantern suit, but it's a choice. Especially if we want to make Hal Jordan look kind of uncomfortable in the suit. Like he's not fully wearing it, it's kind of wearing him. But that's because he doesn't like authority, and especially this authority. We also get some Guy Gardner. We knew he was going to be in the series, played by Nathan Fillion. I believe I've seen somewhere that the series takes place in the past, which is interesting because it doesn't really seem like the Justice Gang has been around very long. They haven't been a team very long, at least. Partially because, there's only 3 of them when the movie starts. They're still trying to figure out the name of their team. Yet Guy is wearing their suit in this shot. So this would suggest, some rumors have put together, that maybe this series takes place in 2016 and 2026. People have compared it to True Detective for a lot of different reasons. But one could be the idea that it's a story told over multiple timelines. I will say the visuals of the trailer, while the trailer is not, bathed in green, you see some green. I do think the trailer has a lot of browns and a lot of yellows, especially that one scene where the sky just looks completely yellow. I don't think that's on an alien planet. I think that is on Earth, but I like that contrast and the idea that they are these small green figures in the middle of this sea of yellow, because yellow is traditionally the lantern ring that works opposite the Green Lantern. Sinestro has it. It represents fear. We get that phrase throughout the trailer, "Are you afraid?" And I think that imagery is going to be cool. It's going to be powerful. It's also just something that would feel natural in a Western, as it should. We get a look at what seems to be young Hal Jordan at a funeral, probably his dad's funeral, probably because of some jet stuff. Hopefully it doesn't feel as kind of silly as the version in the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern movie. I don't think it's silly that his dad died. I think it's silly the way that it's presented, and I'll just play a bit of it here. A lot of people have also compared the look of this series to Rebel Ridge, especially because it seems like Aaron Pierre's character is going to run into some antagonistic cops. Maybe they're corrupt, maybe they're just cops. But a lot of us, including myself, said Rebel Ridge was a perfect Jon Stewart audition tape, and it turns out it might be even more perfect than we thought, because it seems like part of the series is just going to be Rebel Ridge. Alright, last 2 things I noticed. 1. Kyle Chandler makes a kind of goofy face right before he flies. He kind of clenches his lips with his teeth. I don't know, Hal Jordan flying, especially taking off, should feel a little bit more effortless and natural, especially when compared to Jon Stewart, a character that is not a pilot. But I bet that's just Kyle Chandler kind of being uncomfortable with the stunt of being lifted into the air, especially hearing Anthony Starr doing interviews this week about playing Homelander and being raised into the air on wires. It seems like it's very scary.
Holy shit. Okay, please, let's go.
And last thing, so we do see Jon Stewart being a sniper. Now, Jon Stewart in the comics was a sniper in the Marines, but what looks kind of interesting, and I'm just going to examine this shot. This is the only shot I'm going to over-examine here. It seems like Jon Stewart is setting up a shot, which would make sense. Snipers need to be careful, patient, and then before he is able to take out this single target like you usually do with a sniper rifle, something blows up the entire house that the target is in, and you see a little bit of green in that shot. So maybe part of his origin is that Jon Stewart was trying to do some sort of military operation that got botched because of something Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern at the time, did, or maybe Guy Gardner, but I feel like for the emotional impact of the story, it would make more sense if it was Hal Jordan, and maybe that even got Jon Stewart discharged from the Marines. And part of why he doesn't take Hal Jordan seriously and why he doesn't think he deserves to be a Lantern is because he has a personal grudge, and Green Lanterns don't respect the chain of command that I'm assuming Jon Stewart does respect. Maybe by the end of this series we'll respect less after it turns out everybody's corrupt. So that's interesting. And then last thing, the biggest kind of reveal in this trailer is we see Laura Linney is in the show. I think people had suggested she might be in the show before, but I don't believe it was confirmed. We don't know who she's playing. She's obviously, a little bit older than Aaron Pierre, but it seems like she's around the age of Kyle Chandler. Laura Linney is currently 62. Kyle Chandler is 60, and it seems like she kind of knows Kyle Chandler. That's why Jon Stewart is coming to her for advice. If that's the case, maybe she's his traditional girlfriend, played by Blake Lively in the movie, Carol Ferris, who ends up becoming Star Sapphire. Although it doesn't seem like that's what she's up to in this story. But that would be cool, because we don't have a ton of comic characters in this trailer. It seems like it's just the 3 Green Lanterns and Sinestro, which could definitely be enough. But Star Sapphire is a pretty important part of Hal Jordan's story. She's part of her own corps called the Star Sapphire Corps, or the Violet Lantern Corps, which was created by a race of aliens we have not seen called Zamarans. And they're kind of like the Amazons, but in space. Maybe Supergirl bumps into one of them at some point. That could be cool. The only other character I'd say maybe we see in this based off of what we're watching, and this is quite a stretch, but maybe the boxing gym that Jon Stewart goes to is owned by Ted Grant, aka the Wildcat, because he was an old boxer who specifically was inspired by the Green Lantern, although not Jon Stewart, to become a costume superhero known as the Wildcat. Speaking of Wildcats, my cat Mortimer is not on my lap. He is walking all over the desk, including standing on the keyboard and stopping the recording. I love him though, he's very sweet. But you know, if this was the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I'd say, oh, that's probably who they're going to put in there. Especially because, as far as I know, in the Green Lantern mythology, Jon Stewart is not a boxer. It's not part of his backstory. So, I don't know, maybe Jon Stewart was trained in boxing by the original Wildcat. Unless Wildcat was on that big painting in the Hall of Justice, in which case, maybe this is a retired Wildcat who owns a gym. And he's not Wildcat anymore. I don't know, I'm reaching here. But you can't see boxing in the DC universe and not go, oh, maybe that's Wildcat. But, you know, in conclusion, this trailer is getting good reactions online. I think it looks great. A lot of Green Lantern fans think this looks great. And it reminds me that I wish that first trailer barely had any Green Lantern stuff in it. Played it like a True Detective teaser, which was something I brought up in my original teaser video. And then a channel named Jota Edits reached out to me, and they'd made that teaser, and I just think it's better. But like that followed by this, I think the show would be in a really good spot. Otherwise, I am very excited for this show. I love Damon Lindelof. I loved Watchmen. I loved Miss Davis. So I'm very excited for this. And if you've never seen Miss Davis, it's a story about a nun who's fighting against artificial intelligence. It's a wild show. And even though it's about AI, it does get into a little bit the iconography and the mythology surrounding religion. I don't remember talking too much about the devil. But if it did, there's a lot of interesting stuff to talk about. Like, I didn't know that the devil apparently just didn't wear red. That was not a devil thing. It was something that was kind of invented by plays much, much, much later after the Bible was written. But the way that we view the devil in popular culture, a lot of that comes from popular culture. I don't know, I thought that was interesting. Something I learned in a video I watched recently from Curious Archive called The Modern Devil. It's part of their Gods and Monsters series. And it talks about the idea of the devil in pop culture and where a lot of the iconography of that came from, along with just general devil mythology. I think it's really interesting. And if you want to watch that video, along with tons of other videos, you can find them exclusively on this video sponsor, Nebula. Nebula is where you should be watching these. It's the creator-owned subscription streaming service that I helped to create. So basically all my videos, that's Nando V Movies videos and the Nando Cut videos too, go on Nebula first. You can watch them without ads. You can download them to watch them offline. It is, without a doubt, the best way to watch my videos. And that's not all, because you got exclusive content on Nebula. Like I said, like Tom Nichols videos. But that's not our only Tom. We also have Tom Scott, who's doing a series called England, where he goes to different counties in England and does an interesting thing, learns about an interesting industry. And in this week's episode, he drives a boat from his childhood that makes him so happy. It's the happiest I've seen a person in a very long time. And episodes of his series, England, go up on Nebula a week early. And Nebula is already a steal at $5 a month, or just $60 a year. But if you go to go.nebula.tv/thenandocut, you can get a year of Nebula for just $30. That is $2.50 a month. It is an amazing deal. Again, go to go.nebula.tv/thenandocut to check it out. So thank you for watching. I'm keeping an eye out for other Lantern stuff. Until then, stay safe. I'll see you around.